Today is Thursday. There are 1,200 minutes of productivity remaining before the weekend. And we're glad you're spending some of them with the Disenfranchised Podcast. That's right, we're that podcast all about those franchises of one, those films that fancy themselves full-fledged franchises before falling flat on their face after the first film. I am your host, Stephen Foxworthy, and joining me, as always, a man who knows firsthand that butter doesn't discriminate. It's my co-host, Brett Wright. Brett, a Jeffers evening to you, sir.
Hello, Stephen. Jeffers evening to you as well.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I've been feeling a little explodey lately, so we'll see what happens there.
We gotta
I
keep
guess.
that rabbiting, man. I feel like you're on the brink of explosion at any minute. We got.
You know, it's happened before. It might happen again. Who knows?
Look, I've been there. I was this far away from explosion once.
That's true. Yeah, I'm glad you pulled yourself back from that edge, man. That's a dark and scary place.
You got to process stuff sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. Also joining us this week, a man who will do number 800 with the butter. It's our co-host Tucker. Tucker, Jeffers evening to you, sir.
And a Jeffers evening to you, dear Stephen. I'm not going to ask you how you are, because even though I've been doing this for roughly a year, I never realized that there's an exchange right before ours to where someone else asks you how you are and you say how you are. And this is indicative.
I can repeat myself. I do it all the time. I used to be a teacher. I know all about repeating myself.
The thing is I don't really pay attention as much unless I'm involved.
I've noticed.
I'm always saying, like, why would I look at a picture that I'm not in?
Correct.
You know?
Yep.
It's that same kind of deal. Like, I don't listen as much if I'm not involved in the conversation. So usually when you're doing Brett's intro, I'm just waiting for my turn to talk.
Yeah. Ironically, it's exactly like it's having a conversation with you. So that's fucking wild.
Isn't that wild?
It's pretty wild in point of fact. But we are also joined tonight by the vice president of the Tucson Local 33 Musicians Union and the man behind the Grand Voodoo Band. Please welcome, he's also, I have it on good authority, a pole vault enthusiast. Please welcome Evan Tuohy to the podcast. Evan, welcome, bud.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We are very excited.
I am very excited as well.
Right on. How you doing? All right tonight, man? You doing okay?
Absolutely.
Right on.
I am. I'm excited for a Jeffers evening filled of fun and hopefully like minor explosions.
Well, minor, if at all,
just
if
a
at
good
all,
kind.
minor,
Just a good
yeah,
kind.
Maybe just a few,
like a sneeze or two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I hope y'all aren't dreaming, and
not if I can help it.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, and Evan, you have picked the movie that we are discussing today. And what movie have you selected for us, sir?
The film is called Visioneers. It is from 2008. And it is a film that I stumbled upon many, many years ago. Just kind of by chance. I was on a dystopian dark comedy sort of spiel, and I just kind of stumbled upon it, and I kind of fell in love with it immediately and ended up coming back to it until I lost space with it for a while. And last year when I was back in town in my hometown in Indy, I was at a Dollar Tree, and in the bargain $1 bin in the DVD section were 2 copies of Visioneers, and I was like,
is $1 a bargain at the Dollar Tree? I thought everything was $1 at Dollar Tree.
Okay, so some movies are like not worth the $1, I'll be honest, but finding a film like Visioneers that is like, frankly, to most people is a film that they can mostly leave it, but I'm here to take it because I'm all about this film. And I feel like funny? I'm like, what?
I was going to say what's funny is a lot of the reviews that I read on Letterboxd about this movie mention that you can get it for $1 at Dollar Tree.
Are you serious?
I am so totally. At least 3 reviews mentioned that they were like, I found this at Dollar Tree.
You can also watch it free with commercials on Tubi or Freevee or pretty much any
It's on
site that you can
Prime
watch
and
things free
Peacock.
with ads. Yeah, I watched it on
But it's
Peacock. Yeah.
different. It's hard to filter. It's not the same as a bargain bin at Dollar Tree where you can actually see the covers with your own hand and flip it over and see the cast and everything right
Oh no,
there.
we are physical media apologists on this podcast for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's easy to get lost in the sea of content. And it's also not the flashiest of Zach Galifianakis's roles, and
Like the
but
opposite of flashy, really.
which honestly, that's what I'm all about with this film because
Okay.
it subverts expectations in terms of like his role. Yeah, especially like right off the heels of Hangover.
Oh, this comes out right before Hangover, actually.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of people, since it came out at the same time, I think that a lot of what happened, especially the fact that this was released in such a way that I think most people saw it either streaming or like secondhand on like physical media somehow. Like, I'm not sure about its like theatrical release, if any, but this movie got a lot of slack because it was the opposite of what he was doing with The Hangover.
Yeah.
And so people have this like expectation of Zach Galifianakis being wacky and silly and witty and and it's like not that at all, and yet it's like the perfect role for this guy. So
If
God
you've seen-
forbid anybody have range, right?
exactly but
well, if you've seen any of
I mean,
Galifianakis' stand-up, it's very dry and very like it verges on
Well, I mean, if you've seen
anti-comedy.
Between Two Ferns, man, like even
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Well, and that makes sense for you, Jimmy. That's right up your alley. Like that just kind of oddball, surreal, just like weirdness. This dude likes like Eric Andre and Tim and Eric and stuff like that. So I think Zach Galifianakis, especially if he's doing something like he's doing in this movie, that's right up your alley, dude.
Right.
And
this
owns
I
a corner
appreciate
store in
taking
your
the
alley.
risk. Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate taking the risk and being like, this might turn off some fans of mine, but like this isn't that movie for them. So
Well, and
Yeah.
this is a funny this is a funny movie, but Zach Galifianakis is not funny in it. No one is funny in this movie. It's the
I don't know.
situations that
Missy
are.
Pyle's doing some great shit in this movie.
Well, yeah, she's a bit silly, but I feel
Shout
like
out to
she
my
has
girl
to
Missy
be,
Pyle.
it's a really strong cast.
It is.
And the script is
Judy
really
Greer in
well
that bitch?
written. Yeah, absolutely.
Zach
She's
Galifianakis, Judy
fantastic.
Greer, the great Mia Maestro, Missy Pyle, James LaGrosse, D.W. Moffat, Aubrey Morris, Matthew Glave, Chris Coppola, Fanny Masterson, like great Pat Cashman, just some great performances in this movie.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention like for an art film, like you can really you can do a lot, and I feel like this movie does, but it's also subtle about what it's doing the entire time as well. So like, I've seen this movie multiple times, and there's just little things that pop up. Like this time it was a lot of the, cinematography and the score like really stuck out to me on this watch. And more of like a meta analysis of where this was in 2008 with the financial crisis that was happening. In addition to like the start of the opioid crisis as well. Those aren't lost on me. And I don't know. I'm just so curious to hear what your guys' opinion is, because I've shown people this film before and it's gone either of two ways, and they either really love it or they're like, what the hell is this?
That based on what I saw on Letterboxd, that seems to be the distinction. Like it seems to be for a lot of people a love it or hate it kind of movie, just based on what I've seen. So yeah, I mean, Jimmy, you kind of shared, Evan, you shared some. Tucker's
we
the
should
only one.
address that so the audience knows what's going on.
Tucker, explain this shit.
Take it away.
What hast thou wrought here, you bitch?
So this man that sits before us, the one and only Evan Tuohy, he is my bestest of friends. We are the bestest of pals. We are straight up brothers. But for some reason, I call him Jimmy. This is Jimmy to me.
Why do you call
who's
him
this-
Jimmy, Tucker?
Who is this Evan person? I don't know.
Honestly, at one point, many moons ago, I believe Tucker, and I started hanging out, and he, in classic Tucker form, was like, I was like, yeah, my name's Evan, and he's like, yeah, I don't like that. I'm not gonna call you that. Like, what?
I'm gonna give
You
you
have
a
something else? You
nickname.
have. You gave me the option of an alternative, and I was like, well, there's this dumb persona that is named Jimmy Jam Johnson, and he's like, that's perfect, you're Jimmy. And I was like,
Do you
Jimmy
rem-
Jam, and you were like, no, drop the jam, you're just Jimmy.
Drop the
Do you
jam.
remember-
It's cleaner.
Do you remember
And
when I
it's
took it
been,
too far and I started calling you Jim? But I would end every sentence
Jim.
addressed to you with Jim. And you were like,
You-
no, after about 6 hours, you were like, no, we're not doing this.
You really leaned into it, and
I did.
it was a hot, probably August day in
Yeah, what you
your
think there,
sister's
Jim?
shed of playing music.
Oh,
What do you think,
there,
Jim?
Jim. He's
Well,
dead,
Jim. That was some fine playing on the guitar, Jim. You just really hammed it up, and I had to be like, hey, my name's not Jim. You can call me Jimmy. You can't kill it.
I have a
We're gonna
really
kill you,
hard
bro.
time believing that Tucker would take a joke and just drive it straight into the ground like that. That is just so
I
out
would
of character for him.
never.
I don't know.
That's-
Yeah.
You find
Super
yourself
out of
going,
character.
where's the floor? Because I thought we would have hit it by now, but we just keep we keep going. You start checking your watch. You're like, wow, this is astounding.
Yep.
This is still happening. Wow.
Honestly, I'm impressed at this point.
I'm not even mad.
I'm
Worse,
not
it's
even
just
mad.
a bloody
I
chunk of
tip
meat
my
on the
hat to
ground
you.
that's been beaten so much.
Yeah, that's right. Stop. It's already dead. Okay.
But as I've mentioned previously on the podcast, there's something wrong with my brain where I don't like saying people's real names. It seems too formal. And honestly, the only reason that Steven and Brett don't have nicknames is because I met them sort of in a professional capacity. And, I was a guest on the show. And so I know them as Steven and Brett. We didn't meet in the normal way that I meet people.
I met
So that's why
you
you guys
before
don't
you were
have-
on the podcast. We met.
Yeah, but I didn't
filming
know
some
what your
stuff
name
for-
was. I don't know who you are. I said like
touche.
3 words to you, man. I don't even know if I would have said hi to you in the hallway. I wouldn't have remembered your ass.
My favorite part was when you're talking to just who's the guy who does the German guy in these things? Who's that guy? And I'm like, hi, that's me. And you're like, wait, you do that? And I was like, yeah.
This idiot. Great. Moving on. What does it have to do with me? Oh, I don't care. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. As established. Yeah.
No, but I give people nicknames because, like I say, even my family members, my daughter, I can only think of about a handful of times I've called her by her actual name.
Fair.
Yeah.
And
the
I mean,
nicknames
we-
keep evolving. It's really amazing to
We
kind of go on the
usually
journey
not
from where
good.
we started to where we are. It's just nonsensical.
We're not even allowed to
Nonsensical.
use your first name. That's how committed to this you are. So
No, you're not. I mean, you can't.
It's in the
right?
contract.
It is.
there
It's
is
there. It's
one
fine.
person who is, and he used it a lot the last time he was on.
He's grandfathered in. I don't know what to tell you.
Right. Oh, look, I'm not mad about it.
No,
I'm not.
I don't
It is
even
what it
remember
is.
what it is. It's used so infrequently.
Nice. I like that. I like that, Brett. I love that.
I guess
That
the
makes me
moral of
happy.
the story is that I ain't your Jimmy. I'm just Tucker's Jimmy.
Yeah, dude.
So if
So
I
keep
fuck
that name
up
out
and
your
call you
mouth.
if I fuck up and call you Jimmy Evan, and I probably will because I am a very fallible, very tired man. My apologies in advance.
I will
Don't worry,
withhold
I will-
my rage, but
I will call it out by doing a sharp inhale to show surprise and shock. And
I mean, you're
offense.
gonna suck all the oxygen out of that room pretty damn quick. I have a
You'll be
feeling.
like Jimmy, and I'll be like, start
Mm-mm.
clutching I never.
I'll probably do exactly what I just did. I'll call you Jimmy and then go, fuck, no, sorry, Evan. It's probably exactly how it'll happen every time. But
Wait,
sorry,
Matt.
to continue the point that I made, was trying to make 10 minutes ago.
Got there.
2 tangents ago.
Evan, You already kind of shared your history with this movie with us. So let's kind of pass around the horn. Tucker, when did you? I'm guessing Evan showed you this movie during your time rooming together.
Actually, no.
Okay, yeah. What happened?
The first that I heard about this film was when I said, "Hey, Jimmy, you want to be on my podcast?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, like, but what movie are we gonna watch?" And he's like, "I don't know, straight up Visioneers." And that's my complete experience with this film up until when I watched it.
Because I mean, you told me about this movie, and I was like, I've never heard of that. I don't know what that is. Does it fit the format?
Well, I'll tell you, I saw the
Nice.
cover of it when I first looked it up. What Jimmy told me about it. I saw the cover and I was like, "Ooh, I want to go into this blind." So I
Okay.
did not engage with it at all
Right.
until I knew we were doing this,
Sure.
and then I watched
That's
it.
what I do with a
yesterday.
lot of failed franchise starters I haven't seen yet. Is I'm like, well, I know I'm gonna have to cover that at some point, so I'm just gonna hold off until I have to.
Yeah. So yeah, I watched it last night. That was my first experience with it, outside of knowing the name of it and some of the cast.
Right on. Brett, I'm guessing same story.
Pretty much, yeah. Although, I mean, I have seen this movie's sequel called Equilibrium, but you know,
Ho!
not everybody.
Did you see the spinoff called Brazil? Did you see that?
That's
No.
the prequel. The prequel.
Oh, it's the
Brazil.
prequel. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
I fucking love Brazil. Brazil is one of my favorite
Dude.
movies.
Me too. That's
I
one of the
fucking
films
love
that.
Equilibrium. It's fantastic.
Girl, me too. I got a job by knowing what that movie was about. We've discussed
Nice.
this. It's wonderful.
I watched it as soon as Christian Bale got cast as Batman and was like, Equilibrium's kind of his audition for Batman,
No,
which is such a stupid take.
It is absolutely it is.
But people were passing that shit around back in the early 2000s. So that was how I watched Equilibrium for the first time. That movie also rips. But yeah, I had no context for this movie at all before it was brought to my attention, and I was at the end I was like, does this fit the format? I'm like, maybe we can talk about this. Like, is this a failed franchise?
Too late now,
Like,
motherfucker.
it kind of is, yeah.
You probably should have figured that out before the recording, but you know.
Yeah, but I mean, there's some. So one of the reasons I love, personally for me, I love dystopian fiction is the world building. Like I love, and I think I've said this on the podcast before. Like I love good world building, and so particularly when you're constructing a dystopian landscape, whether it's like close to the society we live in and just a few degrees off, or if it's just like a far flung like bureaucratic nightmare like Brazil. You have to construct an entire world. You have to be able to explain, if not through the context of the film, at least the internal logic of the thing has to be consistent enough that you know how the world got to this point. Like because dystopia is nightmare. Like that's what the genre is. And so the world building has to be very complete. And I was very impressed by the world, and this is one of those just it's a few degrees off kind of movies. Like it's not, it
The
has more in
membrane
common
between this and that is so thin. You know what
it
I mean?
is like this is what I would call like chillingly plausible in terms of
Exactly.
dystopia. It has more in common, I would say, with something like Brave New World than it does with something like 1984 or Fahrenheit 451.
Well, the setup in this movie really got me thinking about how I haven't watched The Trial yet, because the setup for this movie, the first act, is very Kafkaesque.
Yeah.
Like, wow. like did somebody like bring that boy back and have him write the first act of this movie? Like it's presented in that kind of way, you know, where like, you know, something's fucked up and you see a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it keeps peppering in, and fantastic first act.
Well, in some of that, I wonder if like, because there is, by this point, the dystopian genre is well trodden, but like there's a shorthand, like a visual shorthand to a dystopia, like to a dystopian reality, or there are certain visual shorthands you can employ and you can use. And this uses like the very sterile, open, empty, bleak, I will say. The Office is just that kind of very open, very sterile, very bleak kind of setting that fits very well with what we kind of think of in our minds when we hear the word when we hear about a certain kind of dystopia, like a bureaucratic dystopia, we picture something very much like this.
Something like this or Severance. I think Severance owes a lot of its visual style to films like this.
That's a good
and
call.
Maybe even this film, which I can't wait for that second season. Hope we get that.
If we get that, God, yeah, I hope so.
Apple TV Plus just went
under
up
the
so
radar.
Wow,
this film just flew so under the radar that it's like anyone's guess at this point, like who has seen this film and been
I'm kind of glad.
because
I'm kind of glad that it did, though, because one thing that it reminded me of, above all of the influences that I could see in it and the things that it made me think of, this reminds me of a movie that I would have seen on HBO probably at about 10 or 11 o'clock at night on a Thursday in the late 90s. Like, this is a 90s art movie. Like, I don't know how it got made in 2008, because there wasn't shit being made like that in 2008. This is a film out of time. There's so many movies very similar to this, especially in the genre of like art flicks, that are so similar to this in tone and execution from the 90s, like stuff from Josh Turnbull, Haiku Tunnel, stuff like that. That it's like, this film it's out of time. It's not ahead of its time. It's not before its time. It's out of time.
It feels like the kind of classic indie that was being made in like the early Miramax years, like something like Clerks or El Mariachi. Like, it has that kind of like, yes, that kind of wing and a prayer
shit.
Yeah, that kind of wing and a prayer kind of filmmaking to it. But because you've got Zach Galifianakis like right on the cusp of hitting, you've got the producer of this movie is one of the producers from Napoleon Dynamite, so he's able to pull from a well of talent that a movie like this might not have had access to otherwise. Like, this is the kind of movie you expect to see like a bunch of actors you've never heard of before, like some of those other movies that we just mentioned. Like, it's got that kind of, the script feels like that, but then you've got Galifianakis, you've got Judy Greer, you've got Missy Pyle, Matthew Glave from The Wedding Singer. Like, you've got these kind of names and these faces that you kind of recognize. Mia Maestro from Alias and Frida. Like, you've got these
everything.
She is ubiquitous, and not in the way that you're like, God, I'm tired of seeing her. Like, but when she shows up, you're like, oh my God, I love her. What's she doing in this? That's fantastic.
I knew it was her as soon as I heard her voice. I looked it up right then. I was like, fucking knew it.
Yeah,
fucking knew it.
I saw, the first thing I saw her in was Alias, and I was one of those Alias boys. And then I caught Frida and on like IFC one night, and I was like, holy shit, that's what's her face from Alias. And so after that, I was a fan. So
she's very good in The Strain as well.
Yeah, she's done. I have got her IMDb pulled up right here because
she's in literally everything.
I mean, like, she's in the Twilight Saga, Oliver Stone's Savages, the Motorcycle Diaries. She was on a few episodes of Scandal.
Is that the one with Benicio del Toro in it? Because I feel like there are more Che biopics than just Motorcycle Diaries.
That was
the one that was just called Che.
Yeah,
right?
The Steven Soderbergh one. Yeah.
Okay. I never remember which one he's in.
Nah, you're good, dude. But yeah, I mean, she's just constantly working, and I for one am glad of it, because she's in a future episode of this podcast, Poseidon. We'll cover that one day. But yeah, she's just been working pretty steadily since the late 90s, and good for her, man. I do enjoy when I see her and stuff, for sure.
And I gotta say, she's not for nothing, but she's pretty easy on the eyes.
She
not hard to look at, not at all difficult to watch for long periods of time.
Correct. Accurate.
Just saying.
I will second that. I will co-sign that. But yeah, so you get access to like a cast, and I think that kind of elevates this movie in a way, but it doesn't really play outside of like the festival circuit. It goes almost directly to DVD. There's not much of there's no box office information. There's not much of a presence for this. So this feels kind of like one of those, if you know kind of movies. And if you don't, sorry about you. It is kind of how this thing feels.
This kind of feels like direct to DVD, which is not always a bad thing because there's no place for this kind of film in a movie theater. Who's going to go watch this at the movie theater?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
this is something that you just randomly find on a shelf somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, hey, if this had been made about 20 years earlier, I probably would have bought it off a mom and pop video store shelf randomly and watched it. It's that kind of movie.
See, and that's what I mean when it's like, sure, it was released before The Hangover, but the majority of folks didn't see it until they were like trying to hype it up
Right.
post Hangover and be like, hey, by the way, did you like that guy? Well, you might like this movie.
It's like when they
like, it's
finally
a risk,
released,
though.
It's like when they finally released Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. They're like, what do we do with this? And then Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger hit. They're like, oh, that's what we do with it.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
and
like,
yeah.
reverse engineer the damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
And try to remarket it in a certain different fashion. And it might have brought some people in and that might have stuck, but it was also kind of a risk because it's like people have this really ingrained idea of Zach Galifianakis and his performance and what his like typecast quote unquote role is. And this is not that film.
Because at that point, his public persona was so singular because The Hangover was the thing we knew him from. Like
exactly.
He was that guy from The Hangover. And for many, he was the best part of The Hangover. So if that's what you're expecting going into this movie, you're going to be really disappointed because that is not what this movie is.
And then the dude has, out of all of the main cast, probably the lowest word count out of everybody. And you know what I mean? And he's basically dissociating throughout the entire movie. So
90% of this movie is just
boy.
Him staring. And I was
legit.
Like, as an actor, I was kind of amazed at, because that shit is tough to play, and he does it so well. Like these where people are just like talking to him, and he's just expressing the subtlest of emotions, like barely perceptible glints of emotion on his face, and he's doing it so well. Like it's
there was one instance that I noticed where they must not have gotten the take they thought they got, because there's one where you can see that he's about to break right before they cut away from him. And it's like, I see you and I understand, and I would not have been able to keep it together as long as you have, so you may have this one, you know?
And I mean, God knows how many takes they went through to get to that one. Right, because there are moments where if a thing is funny, it will continue to be funny, and no matter how many takes you do, you've got to like do something to pull yourself out of that, or you're gonna have a bad time.
It's gonna get worse before it gets better.
Yeah,
when it comes to breaking.
In the biz, they call that corpsing, and if you get on a corpse run, you could very well be done. Like you're just not going to get the work done that you hope to get done just because someone gets a case of the giggles. Yeah. Which is, I mean, that's tough. And again, on something like that, it's really hard because you never know what's going to strike someone as funny. And when you're doing a comedy, sometimes it just feels really weird not to laugh. And for someone like Galifianakis, who plays this, I think one of the reasons why he's so funny is because he knows how to play the sincerity behind the comedy. And that tends to be what makes something funny, is the sincerity of the moment. It's also something, I mean, it's kind of an act. You have to find the truth behind the thing in order to make it funny. But if you're playing for laughs, if you're winking at the camera, it tends to not work as well as when you're playing the sincerity of the moment. And I think that's something that Galifianakis as a performer does extraordinarily well.
Oh, he sells it,
really
even the silliest shit.
Yeah, I think he really trusted the vision that the director and the writer both had, and were like, I see what you're doing and I trust you on this, because he doesn't overly ham it up. He really does just... It's a fantastic role for him, especially with like what he was doing at the time, to then flip it on its head and be able to play the subtlety and play a more serious role. When I try to like, my elevator pitch is always, it's a dark comedy, heavy emphasis on the dark, like more dark, less comedy. You know what I mean? Like, sure, it's less aha funny and more like, kind of funny in a lot of ways. And sure, there's
The humor
gags and
is
laughs,
so
but
subtle in this.
yeah, or it's unhinged and like, but not flashy unhinged, but it's doing it in a way that is just kind of, again, the subtlety of it all,
Hmm.
I think it's
almost in a
in this film.
minimalistic way.
What makes this film funny are the situations and the context of all these scenes and the world that these people live in. It's just absurd. Like, they don't have to be acting funny or acting silly. It's just the whole time you're watching this, as soon as you figure out what's going on, it's just funny. Like, they're not doing anything funny, but it's just funny that this exists and you're watching it.
Like the opening scene, the thing that struck me as so very funny is that he was getting like multiple phone calls a minute, and then he would say he would have a conversation with someone from one of the upper levels in the organization, and then he would hang up the phone, and then his coworker would basically ask him every question that he had just asked the person on the phone, and he would just regurgitate their answers back to her. And that's the scene that happens. That plays out like 3 or 4 times, and that's
Mr.
just
Jeffers himself. Yeah, of course.
of course.
Of
And
course.
that's just the scene. That's just how it plays out. And it's the absurdity of it. After about the 4th time, I'm like, what is this? What are we doing with this? Because again, and yeah, there's humor and repetition, and this is definitely one of those, but it's all played so straight and so serious that you're not sure if you can laugh. Like, you're not sure where the comedy begins and the tragedy ends, like, because it's all,
Where are the lines?
yes,
You know,
exactly.
it also is one of those films that it happens when you have a good script and good world building and a good vision, but when you just drop the viewer into the environment and you give them just subtle hints, and that's it, and like, they're not going to spoon feed you and go, have to just go out of their way to make sure that you understand what's happening, because it's going to happen at a certain point, but the absurdity and the like almost cognitive dissonance of being like, this seems really similar to the world we're living in, but all of this is off. It's like a dream world in a way. It's just so surreal.
Right. Yeah.
And you know what really makes or breaks a scenario like that is consistency, and this movie has it in spades. I mean, there's not, as far as the world building goes, there aren't any plot holes. It tells you what it needs to tell you without outright telling you.
Yeah.
And through consistency, it drives all of that stuff home.
Agreed. And I think that's what makes the world building, ultimately, I think that's what makes the world building so successful, is it has that consistency, and it gives you enough information without needing to spell out A through Z. Like, you understand, because there's you see the logo for the Jeffers Corporation. It's the first thing you see. And then there's Mr. Jeffers. There's the picture of Mr. Jeffers. Like, you understand, oh, this is the guy. There's a president of the United States, but he's clearly in the pocket for Jeffers, because he's basically another Jeffers pitchman. Like, it all feeds in, and they just feed you these. You've got these, I forget what they call them, the unorganized territories. It's not right. It's the unrecognized zone, undeveloped zones.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to see, and you know exactly what that kind of thing is, and then you visit it and you're like, oh, this is what life is like outside of the corporation, and these things just start to click for you as you engage with this, and all the pieces form the whole picture. But we're not dumping it all. There's not a lore dump, there's not an info dump at any point. It just kind of organically happens through the storytelling, and that's the kind of world building I really appreciate.
Yeah, that's something I've talked about before. Like, as the lore guy, as resident lore guy, copyright. Right. Yeah, I care about. I want to know more about this world, because it sort of drops little crumbs here and there and doesn't just dump everything on you, or like answer a lot of questions right away, or doesn't even care about answering questions that you might have about the world, because it's not important. But just because the movie thinks it's not important doesn't mean I don't think it's important.
Right.
And that bugs the shit out of people.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I went into it knowing that they weren't going to explain everything about the world, so it didn't bother me that much. But I wanted to know more, and I think that's always the sign of a good world building and a good movie like this.
And again, you can tell that the screenwriter, and we should point out the director. This film was directed by Jared Drake and written by his brother Brandon Drake. It's their first film. And out of like 20 to 30 ideas that they were kind of all spitting out, this is the one that they decided to make. And through kismet, it landed in the hands of one of the producers of Napoleon Dynamite. It landed in the hands of Zach Galifianakis. Like, it landed in the hands of the right people that basically, once those names signed on, and there is kind of a bit of a Napoleon Dynamite-esque quality to this film, I will say. And of that, I would say, is probably the part of the film that kind of like I liked the least, because I'm on record as not being a big Napoleon Dynamite guy. I just don't get Napoleon Dynamite. And so that tone, it always kind of sits weird with me, and it always kind of puts me off in a way that I don't enjoy. So, but it finds the right people. All that to say, it finds the right people, and that allows these two essentially film students to basically be able to make their first feature and kind of start to make a name for themselves. They've not really done anything major. They're still kind of very small independent guys. I think Jared Drake has made 3 films. He makes a family movie about a soldier returning from Afghanistan and a documentary about people trapped on a mountain. So, and then a few short films. So not a lot under his belt, but you know, he's working, he's still doing stuff.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
I'm glad that this fell into the wrong hands, but I'm glad that into the right hands. I'm just glad that it didn't fall into too many right hands, because I really think the limited budget on this film sells this movie. It grounds this film. Like, that's their house. Like, the dude what wrote and directed that movie, that's their parents' house.
Yeah, they filmed it in their small town in Washington. The budget, there's no budget information. I read an interview with the director, and he's like, less than $1 million. That's all I can say. Like, this film was made on a wing, and again, it feels like it's made on a wing and a prayer. Like, it's got that pure indie spirit to it.
And I think it complements the film. I don't think it would be as good if there were more money to spend on it. I think it's right at that sweet spot. Like I've always said, some films really benefit from a really low budget, and this is one of those. I think it grounds the whole film.
And some directors work really well in those environments, and some really don't. Like you look at an M. Night Shyamalan. We're going to cover a couple of his movies on this podcast one of these days. But you look at someone like an M. Night Shyamalan, like he starts his career making like Praying with Anger, Wide Awake, Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, starts getting bigger budgets, and the bigger those budgets get, the more unruly and out of control those movies are. And then when he comes back with The Visit, he goes small budget, focused story, small setting, small cast, and that hits. That's a return to form in every movie he's made since then, with the possible exception of Glass, which brings back Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis.
Should I watch that though? I still haven't seen it. Should I watch it? I really like Unbreakable, and I thought Split was pretty good.
Yeah, then you'll have a good time.
I think Unbreakable, even though it's not in my top 5 of favorite movies, I think it's probably one of the best constructed films from a technical aspect that I've ever seen.
Unbreakable is my favorite Shyamalan movie with a bullet. Like,
those like, I think the average shot in that movie is somewhere around 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So many oneies, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like it. It's like it's a cinematographer's wet dream.
Right.
That movie.
It's so good. But you know, all that to say, like he goes back to the smaller budgets, which I'm sure Glass probably had a little bit of a bigger budget just because of what that movie was, but it's still a very contained story in terms of the narrative of the thing. But he consistently, and even when he's able to pull larger actors or more well-known actors, he still keeps the budget tight, the location small, the setting, like everything is contained, everything is, and because that's where he worked, he's discovered through trial and error that that's where he works best. He works best in that zone, and he's got a second leg of his career because of that. We'll cover a couple of his mega budget movies at some point. I think one of them we're planning on covering next year.
Is it After Earth?
It is After Earth.
I've owned that since it came out, and I've never watched it.
You'll get your chance.
I got it for free.
Right on. I was going to say, I hope you didn't pay money for that. But no, so like
Don't
that.
tell me you paid money for this. Jose Canseco Bat.
You didn't pay money for this. I love that. But yeah, that, I mean,
Break
so,
it.
but to be able to see, and again, I don't know that Jared Drake has enough to his credit to really be able to say that he wouldn't do well with a larger budget, but some directors work best within those limited confines because limitations impel creativity.
That's the White Stripes right there, man. That's what Jack White was always saying about the White Stripes, dude. He's like, look, Meg's not great, but the fact that like I'm limited to what she does makes me a million times more creative than I would be if I were playing with like the best musicians.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
To build on the music aspect is let me check IMDb real quick. The score is done by Tim DeLauder, and he's like indie pop sort of stuff. He's got a band or two that have made some music for other films and such, but his piano work in this is really stripped down and very bare bones, and I think it lends itself really well to what the entire movie is going for as well. And it opens up at the very end at its, crescendo at the climax with this absolutely lush arrangement. With again, it's probably maybe like, 4 or 5 instruments tops, but it's gorgeous, and it just reflects this movie to where, it's got this sort of like punk, scrappy sort of attitude that flows throughout, and everybody kind of like got the picture. I don't know if it was like, something that came along with like signing onto the project, or if it was just some like cosmic psychic connection that people had to being like, I get this vision, I get what you're doing, and like we're all on board, and we all get, and it just synergized into this really weird, quirky, magnificent piece of late aughts cinema.
And that could also be a testament to the filmmakers as well, like Jared Drake's ability to cast a vision to his cast and crew. I mean, it could be any number of things, but yeah, the synergistically it does click.
It's worth mentioning that the previously mentioned Tom DeLauder is most famous for being the frontman of the Polyphonic Spree.
Yeah, they rule.
Which was a band from the 90s that was rad. Most people back then just knew the name because it's a very unique name.
Speaking of indie movies that feel like they should have been made in the 90s but weren't, his only other composer credit is for a little 2005 indie called Thumbsucker.
I didn't see that. Is that good? Should I watch that?
I haven't seen it, but the score is great.
Well, there you go. I mean, I know of that movie not because I've seen it, but because the cast is like insane. You've got Lou Taylor Pucci, you've got Tilda Swinton, Vincent D'Onofrio, Keanu Reeves, Benjamin
Bratt.
A
lot of those people.
Like it's gotta the cast for what the movie is weirdly stacked. So yeah.
That's kind of what we're dealing with here, though, with this film.
Exactly.
It's just shockingly stacked. So,
and I think it's interesting to kind of look at what Hollywood is doing around that time. Like the actors of this stature and caliber, and they're not A-list by any means. Like this is Keanu has done The Matrix, but like he's on that kind of post-Matrix downswing that kind of hit him after Matrix Revolutions came out. but you get like actors of this certain caliber that are willing to step into indie roles because those are the roles that are more challenging than what Hollywood is doing. Like the franchise machine is already pumping shit out in 2005. So you've got that, all of that to contend with as well. And that makes for, some real, and it's the same thing with TV is now. Like the indies in the early 2000s are what TV is now, where you've got big name actors who are just going to TV because that's where the compelling roles are. That's where interesting stuff is getting made rather than getting caught up in the franchise machinery of it all.
Word.
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah. 45 minutes in. Let's do the plot in 60. How about?
Hey,
let's hit that plot, yo.
Let's do that. So
right on the dot.
So for those of you who are not familiar with the show, who are tuning in to hear us talk about Visioneers, who are you? You are a fascinating person. Like, God, why this one? Why is this like the one you click on first? Like, no, we adore you, but God, you must be fascinating. For those of you who this is the only episode of this podcast you've ever listened to, the Plot in 60 is the part of the show where we normally talk about the plot of the film that we're discussing, and we do that in 60 seconds or less. Now, normally, if it's Brett, Tucker, and I all together, we would roll the D6 of Destiny. If it's just Tucker and I, it's the Canadian Quarter of Indifference. But because Mr. Evan Tuohy is joining us today, then he has graciously volunteered his time and talents to reciting the plot of 2008's Visioneers in 60 seconds or less. Evan, I will give you the 30 and 10-second warnings. And I'm going to put a minute on the clock first because for some reason my timer is not set right. And I'll give you 30 and 10-second warnings, and I will start the time when you start your synopsis.
Well, 3, 2, 1. The story opens with the Jeffers logo. We are then thrust into an office space with Zach Galifianakis and an assorted crew of folks that he works with. We end up going back to his home, and we learn that he is a descendant of George Washington, and he feels inadequate. And then we end up meeting his life coach and his wife, and it's really sad. And they keep telling him to buck up, and he goes to a doctor at one point, and they tell him that dreams are straight up bad. And he's like, but I have them. And they say, you might explode. And that's a thing too. And then he ends up meeting a girl, and it was really sweet because they didn't think that they were going to meet each other. But then things ended up happening to where he thought he'd have to kill her, but he ended up meeting her and everything was great. And he finds himself.
And that is time. Well done.
Pretty good.
Whew. Well done.
Well,
how you feeling?
And not particularly stressed. That order.
And
you got 60 seconds, and you start out with "we open" on. you gotta wrap that shit up, dude.
Man, that's how the
Cliff notes, dude.
That's how it goes. The first few, you get bogged down in the first 10 minutes of the movie, and you're looking like
no details, broad strokes, my friend.
I remember
even the fastest car doesn't go straight to 60, sir.
Exactly. The first time he was on the show, our buddy JP Leck is painting the picture, and at the 30-second mark he's still on the first scene of the movie.
Damn it.
And so I'm like 30 seconds. He's like, and then he just gets so flustered. And I mean, Brett and I have had those moments too, where we're just like, fuck, I don't know what we're fucking doing.
Sometimes it creates the funniest moments in this podcast history. So.
I was going to say my favorite to this day, my absolute favorite plot in 60. And it's one of the worst ones. Brett, you will admit it's one of the worst ones we've ever done. Speed Racer.
Speed Racer. Yeah.
Speed Racer. You know, that's the one I'm always going to invoke when we talk about terrible plot in 60s. It's the Speed Race, that's a fucking great movie. It's a fucking great episode. Fucking terrible plot in 60. Yeah, no. I'm also very partial to the one you did for the 90s Three Musketeers movie.
Oh yeah, that was classic.
Yeah. You know what we should do for next time we take a break is I'll do a supercut of all the best plot in 60s.
Oh, that'd be good.
And we'll do a little thing where we'll introduce it 30 seconds of an intro and then just play a supercut of all the best plot in 60s.
Right on. I dig that.
That'd be rad.
That's a fun idea.
I dig that. Yeah, for sure.
Band meeting over.
All right, and break. But yeah, that's the plot of the Visioneers.
That's what
And
happens in this movie.
I mean, you don't even need to watch it at this point, but you can if you want.
I mean, part of films are visuals, so I mean, and but here's the thing: this movie is so dense and the world building is so taut that there are so many elements that just had to get skipped in that retelling, like the pole vaulting brother that just shows up. The introduction to him when he's just looking out the window and you hear him like screaming as he sprints across the backyard is just comedic perfection. Like that I cracked up at that. Like he just
It's so good.
It's wonderful.
So good. I love his character. I love what his character's there for. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's like how do I get to that when there's like people are exploding and there's like an Oprah Winfrey sort of self-help daytime talk host who's also like, factored in there, and his wife is, buying a book and doing all of the steps, and
I've eaten so much butter.
I could melt myself.
Right.
And
happiness is being happy. What the fuck am I supposed to do with that?
Dude, that's a really, that whole scene is like,
I would argue that might be the
and
thesis of one of the thesis statements of this movie is
for
that just Missy Pyle just losing her shit on TV. And then, of course, the tragic, maybe the most tragically comedic moment in the whole fucking movie is you hear that she put a gun in her mouth, apologized, and pulled the trigger. Yep. And his wife does the exact same thing, except she doesn't die because bullets weren't in the instructions.
Right.
Like, that is the most hilariously tragic thing. That's like when 20 clowns die. Like, that's not just one clown, but like 50 clowns in like one of those tiny car pileups. Like, it just is, it's so dark and yet so funny in the same moment. And you're just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling right now.
And her like sense of timing and pacing and delivery is just kind of, and I also didn't have bullets to pull it. I mean, it just is like a multi-car pile up at that point. And then that breaks open her whole thing about, the only reason I'm stuck in this situation. And then we have like an open door to exposition about, hey, fuck it. I thought like I just take a risk, and like I haven't felt this a lot. They have the entire like chaotic like Minty B sesh where they are throwing things around the kitchen and like drinking beer and like screaming and hollering and it breaks open to this like super brittle but also tender but also completely like dead inside like monologue from her going about like, the only reason I'm stuck here is because of yada yada yada, and
you came in with
the breaking point
Jeffers
finally.
Logo and just swaggering. You were hot shit, and I thought, what the fuck?
And I said, what the fuck? Yep.
Yeah, like it. I've said this on the podcast before, and I'll say it again. If there are people who can do dramatic acting, and there are people who can do comedic acting, but 9 times out of 10, if you need to sell something dramatic and all you've got is a comedian, they can do it because comedians understand timing. And I'm looking at this cast, and it's with the possible exception of Mia Maestro, who is not known, I think, as a comedic actress. It's comedians almost all the way down. Like, these are people that are generally speaking known for comedic roles. Galifianakis, Judy Greer, Missy Pyle. Fuck, Missy Pyle, so fucking funny. Matthew Glave, even. Like, you've got these actors kind of known for comedy, but they're selling these very darkly comedic and very dramatic and very intense performances. And yeah, it all comes down to the timing, but that's something that comedians inherently need to understand if they want to be funny. Like, you've got to get that timing down.
And speaking of Missy Pyle, if I may,
you may.
This is a perfect Missy Pyle role.
Let's talk Missy Pyle. God, I love her.
She is the perfect plot adjacent secondary role. Like you've got Galaxy Quest, amazing.
Future episode of this podcast.
In that, eventually at some point, you've scheduled it like 800 times, Steven. Is it ever going to happen?
No, never.
Oh, I love that movie though. But also Dodgeball, another classic.
Mm-hmm.
Undisputed classic.
Past episode of this podcast, Josie and the Pussycats.
She's kind of she's the scene stealer that you cast in a small role to give something a little pizzazz. You know what I mean?
Future episode of this podcast, Stormbreaker. Like she's got like such a distinct persona.
Well, she kind of reminds me of Chris Tucker in that way, where you bring him in
comparison.
Add some little salt. You know,
just zhuzh it up a little bit. Yeah.
Steal every scene you're in, but only be in a few scenes.
Mm-hmm. And she does that consistently well.
She literally jumps off the screen, not only from the screen within the movie, but obviously the one that I'm watching as well. I mean, she's perfect for that role.
She's so good.
Agreed.
And she's, I mean, she
and
was
then her
in
Minty
Gone
B
Girl.
at the end is just phenomenal. Yeah, exactly. To where it's like, of course, that's like a few years down the line, but it just makes sense because she's able to like do this completely brain dead, you know, person who is just hawking a book, you know, and
very Requiem for a Dream kind of.
Right.
It is. Oh God, I didn't put that together. I've tried to block as much of that movie out of my mind as I can because it's so disturbing. But yeah,
well, that's fair.
I curled into fetal position and just started sobbing when I finished that movie. Like I can't. I will never watch that movie again. I can't.
You don't need to. One time's all you need.
Once is fine.
No need to watch it again.
Yeah.
Is it wonderful? Yes, but
is it a good movie? Yeah, it's absolutely a great movie. But
it's incredible.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you don't need to watch it more than once.
I can't do that to myself. I have to have some respect for myself.
Maybe if you have the mental capacity to do such a thing.
And I don't. I think I've made it. I think it's very well established that I do not.
Yeah, no. I agree.
But no, I mean, again, Missy Pyle, just when's she bad? Like, are some of the movies bad? Yeah. But when is she bad in them? Almost never.
Never.
Yeah. Like she's
it's always fun just seeing her pop on screen.
Hell yeah. And I'm always excited to see her. I'm always like, oh fuck yeah. It's
exactly.
it's the Alfred Molina thing. Which we talked about all the way back on our Prince of Persia episode, where as soon as you see, we said in that episode, Alfred Molina, but I feel the same way about Missy Pyle. I can just sit back and relax because I know I'm in good hands for at least as long as that person is on screen. But I feel about Missy Pyle the same way I feel about Alfred Molina in that way. Like I can just relax because Missy Pyle's going to take care of this for now. Like I don't have to worry. She's in The Artist. Like the Academy Award winning film, The Artist, which is a terrible Academy Award win, but she's in it. Like, so.
She's in a lot of stuff, dude.
She again, like Mia Maestro, she working.
Like is that 200... the film that was about the transition from silent films to talkies?
Yep. With Jean Dujardin and Bernice Bejo. Yeah. John Goodman's in there somewhere.
Oh, I like John Goodman.
He only has one line at the very end because again, it's a silent film. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't bad. Did it deserve to win Best Picture that year? God no. But you know,
shit. Now I gotta watch Barton Fink, you guys. Damn it.
Now talk about your perfect movies. I will show you The Life of the Mind, but you got to be patient, okay? I will show you The Life of the Mind.
We'll show you The Life of the Mind, Steve.
I will show you The Life of the Mind. God, John Goodman, man. I am every time I see John Goodman in something, and that's another man who has just done so much work. I cannot help but think how dirty we have done John Goodman that he has never gotten so much as an Oscar nomination, let alone an actual Academy Award.
No, he's too good for it. He's above that stuff because John Goodman, he can do literally anything.
Literally.
Your boy can be in like the highest rated drama of the year and still carry a fucking show like Roseanne.
Yeah, and he absolutely
And
carries that thing.
everything in between, dude. Like arachnophobia, what the fuck is that? Nobody knows, but John Goodman was amazing.
Future episode of this podcast, arachnophobia. We'll get there one day.
A horror movie that makes me extremely uncomfortable to watch.
Would you rather that or Eight-Legged Freaks, Brett?
Eight-Legged Freaks is a little bit more over the top. So
why not both?
Eight-Legged Freaks makes me a little uncomfortable, but not as much
both of those
because
movies.
It's so over the top and like an homage to old over the top sci-fi movies.
We're gonna have to cover something when Madam Web comes out, so I'm just wondering what you guys want to cover.
We'll do them both.
We'll do it live.
Eight-Legged Freaks. Actually.
Double feature.
That's actually what I have
first.
Penciled in right now. I just wanted to declare.
Arachnophobia feels like it could actually happen. So I don't really.
Chillingly plausible.
Chillingly plausible. So I'm no, thank you. Get that away from me.
Band meeting over.
Yeah. And you were all privy to just doing an on-air band
tangential.
meeting.
We were talking about John Goodman.
We were. Yeah, Tucker brought it up.
True.
Tucker's fault.
What? No, I would never.
I know.
That's
you would
absurd.
never kickstart a tangent.
That is absurd. I don't believe it.
Okay. Yep. So let's talk elephant in the room. Where do we go from here? Like in terms of like if this movie hits, and obviously it was a small indie, it hitting is kind of always an off chance. If it did anyway.
1978 Halloween numbers, is that what you're telling me?
Or if it did Clerks numbers even.
Okay.
Because Clerks gets a couple sequels. If we see a sequel to this movie, and again, I'm doubting that this is intended as a franchise starter, but the ending is certainly open enough that we could probably get there if we reach. Which I mean,
and anything that makes money, like somebody's gonna want to get more of that shit.
Exactly. That's Hollywood.
So if this had somehow like really just slayed at the box office, or even on home video.
Right.
I mean, Equilibrium takes place far in the future from this, so we need an in-between movie to complete the trilogy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think you'll find that movie is called Brazil.
Hey,
okay. I have not seen Brazil, so maybe I should.
You fucking need to watch Brazil, dude. Yeah, that movie is amazing.
Is it streaming anywhere? Because I also have not seen it.
It's Michael Palin's best work.
It is,
and I might need something to watch tonight.
Also, Terry Gilliam's best work. I will tell you where it is streaming. Give me just a moment. At the time of this recording, which is to say 11:02 p.m. Central Time on November 19th in the year of our Lord 2023, Brazil is streaming. It is available to rent or buy on Prime Video, Vudu, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and Apple TV.
Jimmy, I'll send it to you.
How?
In the mail, dude. Straight up post.
Whoa.
Do you have a DVD player? Do you still have one of those?
I even have a mailbox.
Look at that. You could put that in your DVD player and you could see this. You could see this film.
I have the Criterion edition in my living room and it's so good.
Is it 4K yet? Did they put that in 4K yet?
Not yet.
Because that's the only thing I'm waiting on. That's the only reason I still have this DVD is because the 4K isn't around yet.
Well,
speaking of that,
I bought Brazil.
Sorry, Steven.
No, I was just gonna say I brought Brazil way back when I was working at Barnes and Noble, so I've had that thing I think before Blu-rays were a thing. So
this most recent watch of Visioneers was the first time I recall seeing it in HD. Because I don't believe we had it in HD. I think it was just standard, probably 480 when I watched it years ago on like some Comcast sort of like
on demand
sort of deal. Yeah.
And then you had the DVD, so.
And then I had the DVD, which is fine, but that it's the way it was mixed too, or it's my DVD player as well, is like, the audio gets clipped out. Like there's like a noise floor and it's like so quiet in the mix that it keeps cutting out like little subtleties, or you get those like, lo-fi like, boxes or black dots in the back that like is nothing.
Digital artifacts is what they call that.
Yeah. Okay. Then there's plenty of that. But this was the first time I saw it and heard it in crisp HD, and it was a nice
1080p,
ride.
baby.
I mean, not to knock a DVD, like if that's the only way you can see this movie, I'd rather you see it than not see it. But
Absolutely.
but yeah, send Brazil to me ASAP.
I'll give it to you at Christmas.
Oh, okay. Or in a
Well,
month.
because
That's cool too.
look, it's the end of November now. We're gonna be there in like 3-4 weeks ish. It's gonna take like a week to get to you anyway.
Or Tucker, you could mail it to him now, and then he could give it back to you at Christmas.
Fuck, Steven, you're a genius.
I have my moments.
All right, okay, I got you.
Just as long as
Sending
the
it to
shipping
you.
isn't like an arm and a leg.
I got you, Jimmy.
Shit,
Evan,
I will be paying for I will be paying for shipping as always. This will be my gift to you to not have to spend $4 to rent this movie. I'm going to use the postal service so that you at Christmas time so that you don't have to pay $4 to rent this movie.
If you would like Tucker to mail you a DVD as well, then just go ahead and shoot us an email, disenfranchedpod@gmail.com, and just write in the subject line, Tucker, send me a movie, and then write, just what movie you want him to mail you.
And keep in mind, I have the entire series of Hey Vern, It's Ernest on DVD. So.
Oh, good Lord. I didn't even know
that makes you lick your lips.
DVD.
What a score. Yeah.
Right? Oh, Ernest was one of
the calls are coming in.
Ernest was one of the 3 fictional characters I was absolutely terrified of as a child.
I love Ernest. He's the best. That show is amazing. Goes to camp and Saves Christmas and Scared Stupid are amazing films. I speak for nothing outside of that.
I have never seen Scared Stupid. I will also stand Goes to Jail.
Eartha Kitt, bitch. Eartha Kitt is in Scared Stupid, man.
When you grow up in a reactionary religious home,
oh yeah,
anything horror adjacent is the devil. Correct.
Jesus would not like that for you to watch that.
No, and I've just
there's lots of boogers in it too.
I've just never come around to it since then. So yeah, it's just that was for the longest time. And currently, I think that may be one of 2, if not the only Ernest movie I've never seen. I think I've even seen Ernest Goes to Africa, which.
Hey, but outside of that, have you seen Ernest Goes to Jail?
Yeah, that movie rules.
Classic, stone cold classic. Just a tour de force of Jim Varney's acting prowess. And you think I'm being sarcastic? I'm fucking not.
He plays 3 different characters in that movie, and they're all awesome.
That's what's great about his show. The show that he played 4 or 5 different characters. The man was amazing. The man was the Lon Chaney of his day.
He had so much range, and he never got to employ it because Hollywood just had him pigeonholed.
He had Dr. Otto. Remember the mad scientist with the hand on his head? And he had the old woman.
The old woman's the best one. The old woman's the best character. With the
I'm telling you, go back and revisit that show. You guys think I'm kidding? That's one of the best things that was on TV for kids in the 80s. It's fan-fucking-tastic. Highly recommended to anyone who has a sense of humor.
I mean, I used to follow a TikTok account that posted all of his old local commercials.
Those are fun too. Yeah,
those are all pretty fun. Yeah,
that was the Ernest that scared me. Was the one on the commercials. But once I got into the character, I was fine. Once they put a narrative around him, I was okay. But yeah, that's.
Oh, you guys! Speaking of spoilers, at some point, I don't know when, but at some point, probably later on in my my Fifth Thursday shows where I choose at my very whim, we will be watching Existo, which is a film that's not for children, but it is solely about a character from the show Hey Vern, It's Ernest.
Interesting.
Another art house film from the 90s. I cannot wait for you guys to watch that. It's something else. And Jim Varney's in it. He has a role in it, of course, because that's his bud.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So Tucker, if you could write a sequel to this film, how would it go? to Visioneers?
I would like to explore the undeveloped areas. That kind of seems like where George Washington is going. You know, I mean, he's on his boat, you know, and everything, but I feel like if we're going to do a sequel, he needs to kind of adventure into those lands. I can't think of simple words, you guys.
Words
He
are
must
hard,
journey into those lands because, I mean, the first film we've seen what happens in the Jeffers corporate land, and we've had little peaks of the undeveloped areas. But I think it would be cool to kind of do the opposite thing if there were a sequel, kind of explore what's going on in the undeveloped areas. See how many people are, you know, taking off their little neck boxes. Because there's revolution in the air. I can fucking smell it, dude.
Yeah,
That's what I want to
it's on
see out
cusp.
of the second one. I want to see the start of the revolution, dude.
So did you guys know that there was a proposed spinoff with this? I don't know if you guys found this in your
format.
I don't know if you guys knew this in your digging up dirt on this movie.
I did not come across this. Please enlighten us.
Okay, so I think it was like 2016, around that time, between 2016 2018. I believe it was Jared Drake and maybe a few other people from this movie had the idea that they would make a spin-off that centered around Mac Luster. If you remember that bit where it cut to that dude who was like doing like an 80s Rambo like style TV show where he's like punching people and running around and he's like interrogating that old lady and stuff. Like,
right.
The idea was they were going to have a spin-off show that is that show. And they formed like a GoFundMe or something, and we're trying to, you know, raise money to, you know, be able to produce at least a pilot. And I don't think they ever, I mean, it's been years, so I don't think they ever like got what they needed out of it, and it just stalled out. But
interesting. Okay.
So there were attempts. It's not a direct sequel by any means, but yeah, Mac Luster was the proposed like spin-off, and it just never came to fruition. So
I could see that being something you'd see on Adult Swim, little 15-minute snippets.
100%.
I'd watch the shit out of that for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, right on. That would have certainly been interesting.
I guess like I guess it would have been really rad, but I don't know where it stalled out, if it was the money or if it was like couldn't find a home somewhere, you know what I mean? But
right. But
at least we have that 30-second snippet, and we can imagine in our minds the show that is Mac Luster.
And also now we have, you know, it fits the format of the show now that you've brought that to light.
Yeah, because
that
was
the most important part.
That was my I was just like, and again, I'm watching this thing and I'm just like, where does this go? Like, and so I was asking that legitimately. I was legitimately curious. I'm not trying to like gotcha or anything. I'm just like, how does this fit into what we do? But that ties it in. That brings
you inadvertently did the bit, the segment that we should have been doing from the beginning, but we haven't. So shut the fuck up.
Then we forgot, and then we remembered, and then we didn't do it for a really long time, and now here we're back, and now shut the fuck up.
Honestly, we just consistently forget because like there's no consistency here whatsoever. We're just like guys that forget shit and are excited to talk to each other. But anyway, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. So
that's the complete name, I think. DXCE Super Hyper Turbo Edition.
Correct.
Yeah. So good job,
Esquire.
Yeah,
you Esquire. You fuck. Anyway,
I'm sorry, Brett. Continue.
No, I'm
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see a prequel. I want to see a prequel that either follows George, his brother, and his journey, because he seemed like he had quite an interesting backstory.
A rich
and
backstory,
like a prequel that then runs through the movie that we just watched into the aftermath, because
You want an Pearl Maxine sort of deal.
Well,
You want a
it's just
Road Warrior,
but
Mad Max, Thunderdome.
his character is so interesting to me because that's what gives this movie this like weird off balance feel too, because you think his brothers got it, right? You're watching it and you're seeing George be like stuck in his life, and he's stuck in this marriage that is like loveless, and he's stuck, doing all of this like stuff that he can't stand, and he's like has this backstory with a family lineage that he cannot measure up to, because we live in a society that is completely, you know, alienated folks to the point that this is where they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother kind of like goes off, and he has this like hippie sort of like self-discovery time where he goes to find out who he really is, and he's back here, and he says, I had a dream that I did this once, and he starts pole vaulting, and it's this sort of like inner discovery that seems really beautiful, and you're like, oh, his brother's completely got it. He's woken up to like the bullshit, and he found a way to like get through it. But what ends up happening is it's bastardized by this like ultra hedonism sort of aspect of like people coming in and going, you can just party your way out of this broken system. And his brother fights it. He even sees what's going on at a certain point, and it's like, the FBI is about to raid the house. He even knows that the FBI is out there like ready to completely raid his house and, destroy this little bit of like hedonistic paradise that he built. But like he realizes the folly in that, and then he like breaks at a certain point, and also realizes that it's like pointless for him to fight it, because he ends up, hanging out and partying with the same crew. And, next thing we don't go back to that house, because next thing you know is the FBI has raided it, when we then meet the purported Mr. Jeffers, and then we meet the actual Mr. Jeffers. And like that is as like his brother's entire like party like getaway is being raided by the FBI. I just want to see a prequel and sequel based off his brother, to be totally honest.
What I really appreciated about the brother character and like his whole group and his philosophy is, like you were saying, when you're first introduced to him, you think maybe he does have it all figured out. But then by the end of it, you realize that he's in the same box as everybody else. He's ticking the same check marks on the form as everybody else. He's just doing it in a different way so that he feels unique.
Exactly.
It doesn't change anything. Like he's still doing the same things, just in a different way. I thought that was really compelling. I quite enjoyed that. That was fun.
And the Jeffers reveal to me felt very reminiscent of the Big Brother reveal at the end of 1984, where you find out that Big Brother's been dead for years, and it's just kind of like his underlings kind of running the show in his absence, because you've got this like guy who is the face of Mr. Jeffers. He is to the world, for all intents and purposes, he is Mr. Jeffers. And then he comes to see George Washington at the end and goes, oh no, Mr. Jeffers is outside. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on? And you get it. And
I was a little confused at first. I was like, wait a minute, isn't that? Oh,
it's this frail old British man who just coughs a lot and like has very like a very moist lips. Like he just looks
like
he just looks very dewy as just
very damp.
A dewy gentleman. Yeah. He's just needs to mop the brow, maybe, wipe the face off a little.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very interesting, I don't know, a very interesting dynamic that, again, I think plays really well into the dystopia, because the people that you think are running the show are not really running the show, which is, again, a very dystopian idea. You're being lied to by the government. The people that are supposed to protect you are the ones that are lying to you. Very dystopian idea.
Oh, there's an epidemic that is causing people to have like anxiety attacks that lead to an explosion. Like I'm sure like
So
we'll just cover up the problem and just fix the symptom. You know what I mean? Like instead of
right.
fixing the actual
So what do you think
systematic
really
issue.
is? So you've seen this movie, Evan, more than the rest of us, which is to say more
Yeah.
than once. So what do you think it is that's causing the explosions that happen? I mean, we only see one, but we know that others happen. The close up on Chris Coppola's face when he forgets to pull the trigger on his unloaded gun and realizes what's about to happen, and just his head just goes full scanners in close up. It's really rad. But like, what is it that you think causes that? And to that question, at the end of the movie, is George still in danger of exploding, or has he finally figured it out? How do you
Well,
read that? That's two very different questions, I realize, but I kind
it
of want your
feels
thoughts on
like
those.
no, I feel you. It sounds to me like it's like half like anxiety attack and half of like a cognitive dissonance of being like stuck in this dystopian hellhole. And because like it's not like people are just depressed and they're exploding. They are actually idealistic and they actually have a spark to them. I mean, there's that rant at the end where um, George's wife is straight up screaming about like how they like the media and the powers that be have framed it to where people who explode are a defect, like
Mm-hmm.
they're a bug in the otherwise like properly running system that is the society, whereas like it's actually they're better than us, like they still feel something, like they still. And so that's what I think it comes down to is like if you feel something and are still alive inside and you are stuck in that system, like it's a metaphor obviously for suicide or drug abuse or anything like that, because like at a certain point it's like people start killing themselves because they can't explode,
Mm-hmm.
almost in a way, is like the
Right.
dark under like the subtext of it all. um
And cause
and
their
so
heads to explode in other ways, like Missy
Yeah,
Pyle's
it,
character
I mean,
does.
ex-
Yeah.
exactly.
his wife says that. Like, I sat here trying to explode and I couldn't because I'm empty inside.
Right.
Exactly. So it's that, that idealism that is snuffed out by um an overly like repressive and sterile and sad society that just exploits you and takes, and you're left buying butter and listening to daytime talk show hosts who just hawk products at you, and you're only like uh the only way that you think that there's recourse and a way out is by buying shit, or like joining like some like wacky organization, or like tuning in, turning out, turning off, and dropping out. Like,
Right.
yeah, that's cool, but like not to like take it back to the 60s, but that's why a lot of like the issues that we're dealing with today that were brought up all those years ago like were never solved, is because there was never any collective like unifying action, that like it kind of got snuffed out by this like cultural narcissism.
Mm.
Oh yeah,
And
the
so
attitude
that's
of the 80s and 90s, I can tell you firsthand, was just ignore it, it'll fucking fix itself.
Right.
yeah,
About
mind your own
everything.
business, take what's yours, mind your own business, and like this is the society we're stuck with. And this is like the child of that sort of Reagan era um idea. And it's like it's got that like Tucker's right though, it's got that 90s cynicism
Mm-hmm.
and wit, and like
A very Gen X-y movie in that regard. Yeah.
yeah, it's literally, it doesn't have to go all the way, you don't have to go far to hit a dystopia, you know what I
No.
mean?
Well, and again,
Like you don't have
you
to
said,
so
that It's a thin line between what is and what could be.
Extremely thin membrane. Yeah. So yeah, that's my take on it at the very least. Um and yeah, and it's funny because like it's like again I come back to his brother, but his brother had that spark, but it was like wasted on giving up and tuning out and just partying and being like, fuck it, the whole world around me is burning.
Right.
But like, and there could be something happening. He could have organized these people to do something or like raise clash consciousness. Even Mr. Jeffers at the end has this whole monologue about, the real Mr. Jeffers has this monologue about that there's a war going on right now, Tunt. And that war in real terms is a class warfare.
Right.
And that's happening to where people are either giving up and killing themselves, i.e. like exploding, or they become dissidents, but they don't do anything about it. Like, you're in the counterculture, sure, you're pushing back, but like, where's your time and energy and efforts going? And instead of at least using that time and effort for self-discovery, like how George ends up doing, because he hit the absolute breaking point.
Right.
And I like to think when his that note at the end says kill the thing you love, he has completely at that point bought into this, like, distorted Jeffers logic. He has completely given up at this point. He has lost all the will to live. So like, what's the point? I'll kill the one thing I love. And it's implied he's probably going to kill himself too. And that is broken. And he has this moment of like self-reflection and like breaking through to like some form of enlightenment, whereas his brother let it get bastardized by partying, and it looks like he's drinking and shit too, and like just dicking around. And so that pole vaulting, instead of it being like a rallying point for people to come together and hear each other and build community in this like shitty time, just ended up getting bastardized overall by people just wanting to escape and having no other recourse but to escape even from the self, which is like doing the wrong kinds of drugs, drinking, partying, ignoring your problems, ignoring the outside problems, and like shit, even Mr. Jeffers knew that his time is like short, like physically, but also like the dude was worried. Like, people are exploding, people are defecting, people are going to the undeveloped areas. Tucker was right. There's like revolution in the air. So, yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's the sequel I want to see. I want to see that sequel. I want to see that revolution, man.
Are you all at all concerned about an uprising?
Only in the sequel.
Only in the sequel.
Which I'd watch. I'd watch a sequel to this.
I mean, yeah, I probably would too. There's so much, and I feel like even though we've been going for like an hour and a half, like I feel like we're still barely scratching the surface of what this thing is, because there's so much to glom onto. There's so much to latch onto. But I think ultimately the thing that stood out to me most is that everyone is distracted. Placation through distraction. You've got the television, the books, even the fried chicken jingle that comes on. And so what does he do? He hears it and he immediately stops and buys fried chicken. And what are they putting on every piece of food? They're eating giant pats of butter on fucking everything. Why is everyone in this movie not 500 pounds? I do not know.
This is the sequel to Josie and the Pussycats. They put it in. They put it in the music, man.
Created an entire franchise of connected movies.
It's in the music. It's in the food. There's got to be something going on with that butter.
Yeah, dude.
But
you can't say George wasn't trying. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, dude's trying his damnedest to like find a little shred of happiness, and somehow buying things and spreading butter on all your food doesn't fill those little holes inside. So
I mean, it may make you feel good in a moment, you know, the serotonin level that comes with, you know, eating a comfort meal, or, you know, receiving a package, or you know, buying a new book or a new movie, or, you know, we've all hit those serotonin rushes. We've all got those things that kind of make us happy, give us a little in the moment. Um, and, you know, but I think in the large picture, we all know that kind of shit is fleeting, right? Like that's there's no satisfaction in those small things. And so
I also want to note there is not a therapist in sight in this movie, even
no,
though it seems like a lot of people could be using a therapist. It's as far
People
from
are
it as we can get.
exploding for crying in the mud. Can we get a
Yeah.
doctor in the house?
the closest
And
we
what did they
come,
do? Yep. Say it.
the closest we come is Roger the Codger. That's
Yep.
the closest we get to a therapist.
Is that the
in this
life
movie.
coach guy?
That's the life coach.
Yes.
I liked that guy. He was fun.
Glenn Guglia
He
from
was a lot of fun.
The Wedding Singer, Julia, or Drew Barrymore's
Julia
fiance,
Guglia.
Julia Guglia, at the beginning of the film. Yeah. But yeah, like he, and I'm sitting there the whole time going, where do I know this guy from? So I looked him up and I'm like, oh, he's fucking Glenn. Oh, like, God, that's hilarious. Like that might be my favorite Adam. Well, my favorite non PTA directed Adam Sandler movie. Wedding Singer might be my favorite Adam Sandler comedy. There, that is what I will say.
It's pretty all right.
Yeah, is not bad. You know, when stacked against other Adam Sandler fare, for sure.
It holds up.
It does in a weird way that you wouldn't expect. But and so he's there like trying earnestly, but all of his solutions are very, again, it's very much in line with the company line, with the kind of the standard wisdom of, you know, the day. Like, it's all about trying to kind of calm him down in a moment, trying to find, you know, again, the little moments of pleasure, you know, contrary to, you know, encouraging to have sex with his wife, when he clearly doesn't love her. I mean, it's a loveless marriage. That seems very clear. And when they do finally start to get intimate, as soon as she fucking brings up the butter, he's out of it. Like he's immediately done. Like he thinks there could be the chance for connection. He tries to actually forge a physical connection and an emotional one along with it. And then as soon as she asks, will you do number 800 with the butter? He's out. He's done. And I would like to know what 800 is. I would be willing to do 800 with the butter. I just tell me what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll bet you would, Steven.
With Judy Greer? Fuck yes, I would.
Hey.
She fine as hell. What?
But Judy Greer type of way, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you don't think Judy Greer's attractive? No,
I think that she has a very unique look, and yeah, I do find it attractive, but I will also recognize that it is a very unique look. So that's why I say she Judy Greer pretty. Okay, it's not an insult.
I just don't know why we have to qualify it. Is all I'm saying. But yeah,
let the record show.
Because we're already objectifying her. We might as well go a step further, Steven.
For the record, I'm not.
Brett's typing all his thoughts in the chat, and God, they're filthy.
Don't lie to these people. Don't tell lies, Steven.
Look, if we're going down, we're all going down together.
I'm just a guest.
No, dude, you're in this shit.
This ain't my ship, dude.
We're 92 minutes into this sumbitch. Like we're all in this together. And we will all go down together.
And in total, this is about 3.5 hours into a recording.
Yeah. So, we've been going out. We've been going a while.
It's closer to 4, but dude. Sure. Yeah.
Just chugging along.
We are. What else do we want to say about the Visioneers?
I love this movie.
I also liked it quite a bit. Like I say, it did remind me of some kind of specifically corporate capitalism based indie films, art house films from the 90s. I would encourage anyone to look up Josh Turnbull. He did a series of films in the 90s, one of which was called Haiku Tunnel, that even though it's not dystopian, this movie reminded me of a lot. It's a weird one. This movie's weird. That movie's weird. A lot of the shit I was watching like late at night on HBO in the late 90s was weird. That's where I discovered Pootie Tang, you guys. Was HBO at like 11:30
and he was
at
never
night.
the same.
We all know about Pootie Tang, man. We all know.
I couldn't keep my eyes off the screen.
Pootie don't need words. Pootie don't even need music.
We don't always know what he's saying, but we always know what he means.
Sarate.
Wanata.
I'm just happy this movie exists at all. I'm sad we didn't get a lackluster out of it yet, but I'm happy this even exists because it's quirky as hell, and it's I haven't really seen another movie that quite scratches the itch that this tends to, even if it on a certain level is like, I don't know, flawed or is just very like lo-fi indie vibes, but I don't know. I like that because it kind of makes people have to step out of their comfort zone in a way. And movies just don't make themselves at that point, you know?
It does kind of wear a lot of its influences on its sleeve, but it's also kind of a unicorn in a genre full of unicorns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, that whole 90s, mid 2000s indie art house scene, especially the stuff that was dealing with, like I say, corporate stuff, capitalism, office jobs, all that shit. It was a big deal, and it does have that vibe, but it's also it's its own thing. There's nothing like it, and I can always appreciate a movie that does that for itself. Right. You guys, I think we lost Brett.
We did. I just texted him.
He doing all right? I can edit this part out.
Right. Yeah. You gave yourself enough of a clean break that we can edit this out.
That's what I was doing, Steven. How'd you know that's what I was doing?
I've been doing this for a little while.
A few days at least.
Once or twice.
I think he coming back. Here he come.
Oh, here he come.
He yellow.
He do come back though.
And I mean like that, not as a racial slur, but that he's a coward.
Right. No, user is experiencing some connection issues, but recording is being saved locally.
No, I'm going to leave that. That's coming right after your song.
Leave it.
Keep it in, double it.
This podcast brought to you by Casual Racism.
Yeah.
Oh, you should have seen, what was the, people named Josh from a couple weeks ago.
Oh, shit. What was this all about?
We were talking about how some names like you just associate with terrible people, and one of the names Steven came up with was Josh, and I said, no offense to anyone named Josh that listens to this podcast, and he said, yeah, you're one of the good ones.
I said, yeah, not you, you're one of the good ones.
Fuck.
I was like, oh!
And Tucker just went, oh! There he is.
Oh!
Hey.
Casual racism.
My internet wouldn't load anything, and then it just decided to work again.
But hey, now you're back, and that's all that matters.
That is,
dude. Jeffers evening.
True.
It's a Jeffers blessing.
That is Jeffers
evening to all of
Jeffers
us.
Lesson.
Jeffers evening to you all.
I had just finished talking about how I thought, even though this fit into a lot of genres that I'm familiar with, and how I could see some of the influences, it's very much its own thing and something that I've never seen before or will ever see again, is basically what I had just said. Action.
Yeah, cool. I mean, just talking about this movie over the past hour and a half has made me bump it up in my rating.
Same.
So
that happens sometimes.
Nice.
Yeah. Even like sometimes you don't even have to watch it with someone who's enthusiastic about it. Sometimes you just have to talk to him about it afterwards.
I feel like this is a movie that if I do rewatch it, this is a movie that will probably grow in estimation for me the more times I revisit.
It is a grower, not a shower.
I feel, because my initial reaction, I was very mid on this movie. So mid, I think my Letterboxd score was a 2.5. But just in talking through the disparate elements as they exist, I don't know. I'm still not willing to go out and say this is a perfect film, because just I don't know. There feels like there's so much going on that it's almost uneven in certain ways.
Well, I think I said before, like the amateur nature of it and the lower budget helped this film out, but it's still kind of goes against it as well
mm-hmm.
in the same breath, you know.
Exactly.
It's there's a trade-off, you know.
There's a tension for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there's pros and cons with anything, and then if it had too much money, they could have, you know, fluffed it up another way, and it just wouldn't click the same way that it does now. And
yeah, I don't want this movie any other way than the way that I have received it. I don't think.
I think it's the perfect amount of flaw. It's a charming amount of flaw.
I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I think it's the perfect kind of movie for what it is.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
It does what it does very well. The cast, they got the right people in the right roles to do the right thing. It works. Like this is not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it's there's some murkiness in here that I think works against it in certain ways. But again, I think some of that could be, and again, this is why I say it'll probably grow in future estimation, or in my estimation of future viewings. It feels like there's so much going on that it's difficult to get it all in your first sitting. Like you need to engage with this multiple times because there are so many different things going on. There are so many pieces that don't fit. The more you watch it, the more that meshes, the more that fits together. That's why I asked you, Evan, what causes the explosions and what you think happens to Galifianakis' character at the end, is because you've seen this so many times. I trust your read on it more than I trust my own.
I don't think at the end of the film he is at risk of exploding, but I also would not hang my hat on that. I don't think he's like clear to go, and that's how like that's how personal growth and like that kind of thing always go, is like you never hit a point in your life where you're like, okay, now I can coast, things are cool.
Yeah, I've arrived.
Yeah, and now I can just like put it in cruise control and like go for it. Like, so no, he's like not immune. He's completely susceptible, as is everybody, like to that. But to hit that plateau where he is there, I think he's in the clear. But you know, it's also like he's gonna have to get off the boat at a certain point and get back to his life. His son is like MIA, bro. You know,
literally the whole movie.
We never wrapped that up.
Like his son's just gone.
Yeah.
His brother's probably in federal custody. His wife and him are not divorced. I mean, she seems like she's down.
As good as, but yeah.
Who knows what she did with that shotgun after he left? Who knows?
Right.
And where do you find a job?
She found the chapter on bullets. I don't know.
You know, how do you participate in society when on one side you have like corporatocracy, and on the other side you have this like small town like cutesy vibe, but everybody there has got a, you know, emotional like, you know, blocker sort of device plugged on them and is completely ignorant and blissful about it.
Do you go to one of the undeveloped areas that hasn't had those imposed on them yet and just take your chances? Like, yeah.
Well,
that's what I'm saying. You can't outrun it, though.
You can take them off, though. You saw how easy he took it off Homegirl.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's true.
But it's like,
because
it's the same thing with They Live. It's the same thing with They Live, though, is like, congrats, you took it off, but like, what you have to then see when you're not basically being pumped full of serotonin and dopamine through an artificial device is a really crushing reality. And I feel like most people would rather just coast and just like plug into the easy version mode instead of having to problem solve or work through these issues like personally or societally. So it really does beg a question of like, it's anyone's guess as to where the movie or the character or anything goes at this point. Because he certainly hasn't escaped. It certainly feels like a happy ending, but as somebody who's seen it multiple times, I'm sitting here talking with you guys about it and getting to, it's been years since anybody who I even know has been able to talk to me about this, so it's been a
So you got a lot of
pleasure being
pent up
able to.
feelings about this movie to kind of get
I
out.
was like in the wilderness for like 10 years. Nobody, not even Tooby McDooby himself was like plugged in on this movie. And he's like one of those guys where I throw out the most random title and he's like, oh yeah, I've seen it. Like,
I'm the
I
guy.
got the poster for it.
I've seen the movies people haven't seen, which is why when he brought this film to me for the podcast, I was honestly kind of surprised. Because even if I hadn't seen something like this, I should at least know about it. I should have heard about it. This should have been on my radar. So huge blind spot for me, unfortunately.
Well,
But
I think
now
that
I've seen
speaks
it.
to how indie this movie really is. Like, this is very indie, very niche. Like,
Even
I
for
went
indie
looking.
films.
Yeah, I went looking for information on this movie, and there's not a lot out there. There's like one of the main sources of information was an interview that Jared and Brandon did for like their local Washington newspaper from the town they grew up in. Like, that's where I'm looking for
Well,
information because it's just not out there.
This is a direct to video, like through and through, with people who you've seen in other stuff.
Correct.
And I feel like that's kind of the vibe that you get from it, and it's weird that it's not more well known,
right?
Because of that, honestly.
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely would agree.
It's definitely not the kind of film that if somebody who has never seen a movie and is like, describe film for me. Give me one film,
What's a
please.
movie?
That like, what does movie? And you're like, you know what? The perfect thing to like, ease somebody into this like artistic experience. How about Visioneers? Like, no, not my go-to. Like,
I don't think you could ask a million people. Visioneers would be no one's first pick.
Even for cinephiles, it's kind of like a touchy thing because like people can get a lot out of it, like personally and subjectively, that I don't see in a lot of films.
Well, I think that this movie is as clever as it thinks it is, but I also think sometimes it's kind of snooty about it, and not in a bad way, but in a way to where it feels like the movie's telling you, hey, catch up. If you can't catch up, like, maybe it's not for you.
Right.
And that's not to say that it's like you have to be incredibly clever to enjoy this movie. Not at all. But there are some nuances in this film to where I think the movie kind of takes great pleasure in like trying to pull one over on you. And I as kind of snobby as that can come off, I had a good time with it.
Yeah. I think the Jeffers reveal is probably the most obvious instance of that kind of thing.
It never feels too condescending. It's never felt that like that to me, though. Especially, and it doesn't have that like dark, like biting, cynical like attitude that a lot of like 90s films of the same sort of like cloth would be doing, to where it could be overly like overly brittle, or it could also be like overly like beating you over the head with the moral of the story, and like like just really screaming it from the rooftops. And it's like, look, I get you're angry or whatever, but like this thankfully never has that sort of point to where it's like overly cynical or overly like snooty or condescending of a film, to think that the audience isn't smart enough either to like, at least if it feels like you don't know what's happening, like it's not going to rub your face in a way, though, at least too.
Well, that's what I was trying to say, is that it feels like it kind of encourages you to keep up. Like it motivates you to maybe not look at your phone and pay attention to what's going on, so that you can sort of be fully engaged in it, because it's the kind of movie where you can't you can't not like watch everything, even though a majority of the shots are just still shots of people literally staring into space.
Right.
It's still you
that's
have
like
to
90% of this movie is just people like blankly, vacantly staring.
Dissociation, the movie.
Yeah,
Right.
you have to keep
very
up.
much. Yeah, fucking wild.
Did this movie? What did this movie? Was this movie even in theaters?
So it ran the festival circuit. Very extensive festival run on this movie. And I
Did you say
think
extensive?
I did.
Okay, sorry.
There is a film premiere on June 12th of 2008, according to the Wikipedia page. But the official release that's on the numbers and then further down the Wikipedia page is the DVD release, which is July 21st, 2009. Now, I have both of those weekends pulled up. Which of those would you like me to cover? Would you like to do the original theatrical release from June 2008 or the DVD release from July 2009?
Well, I feel like in accordance with tradition, we have to do theatrical no matter what it is. If you want to put like the home video numbers as a cherry on top at the end, like
I can pull those. I do want to say that in the 2009 the film box office, you've got two Galifianakis films in the top 10. You've got The Hangover at number 7, and then opening at number 1, future episode of this podcast, G-Force, the movie
is that
about
the hamster movie,
the guinea pig spies. Yeah,
I'd watch that.
So yeah,
it's gonna suck, but I'm gonna watch it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely no box office details for this movie.
But Zach Galifianakis as a hamster though, or a guinea pig, I could see that. That's inspired casting for sure.
Is he playing the guinea pig though?
I don't know, man. But if he is, then it works for me. I'll watch it. Like I said, it's probably gonna suck, but I'm just saying that's good casting. Like who do we get to play a guinea pig? Fucking yeah.
Tracy Morgan is in that movie, I think. Like it's got a really wild cast. That movie.
Now I have to see it.
Yeah, I know you do love you some Tracy Morgan. So the box office for June 13th, 2008, opening at number 1. It's a new release. We've actually covered this box office before when we covered the number 1 movie, past episode of this podcast. The only MCU movie we have ever covered.
Get on with it, Steven.
On this podcast. It is The Incredible Hulk, opening at number 1 to $55 million.
Eddie Norton's Incredible Hulk, yeah.
Correct. I should note that, of course, out of the over 125 entries on this list, Visioneers is nowhere on the list. So in second place, dropping from number 1 the week before, animated film called Kung Fu Panda. What if a panda knew Kung Fu?
Movie. Yeah.
I saw that in theaters when it came out.
Oh, that is one of my dad's perennial favorites. Like my dad hated cartoons when I was growing up, but now that he's like an adult and doesn't have to reckon with children, he'll watch cartoons all the damn time. Man loves cartoons, and Kung Fu Panda, one of his favorites. That's it. Just I feel like cheated though, because like during my childhood years when I loved watching cartoons, he didn't want anything to do with it. So I feel a little gypped, but whatever. In third place, we were speaking as we were of Mr. M. Night Shyamalan, The Happening, which is I think the beginning of the end. Well, no, technically Lady in the Water, but
what if something happened?
What if? But that's the great irony, of course, of that movie is that nothing happens.
Mark Wahlberg's like,
is that?
What was that? What was that? Was that your mother? Was that a chicken?
Dude, that was like literally one of the worst like cast movies I've ever seen. It's so awful. Like whose idea was it to put those two together? Like
the best.
Like I watched that last year. It was awful.
The best thing to come out of that movie is that
worst twist ever
was M. Night Shyamalan directs John Leguizamo in that, and then many years later they would reteam to work on Old, about a beach that makes you
Should
old.
I watch Old? Some people be telling me I wouldn't like Old, and some people telling me that I would.
Brett and I saw it in theaters.
I like Knock on the Cabin. I like that. Do I want to watch Old? I like the
standard
cast.
for his work to me.
Yeah, and I'm
Not
not
average,
average,
so not bad.
I saw it at a very, very bad time.
And I didn't
Okay.
realize how bad that movie was going to be for your mental state in that moment when I suggested it. So
Like my
apologies again.
threshold for bad M. Night is The Village. So
It's better than The
if it's
Village.
okay, well then I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm straight in.
I think I like it better than Knock at the Cabin, honestly. Old slaps. I like old quite a bit.
Word.
And it's got a pretty good cast. Again, a lot of people that you like haven't seen it, like Rufus Sewell's in that bitch, Vicky Creeps, Diego Luna. Like it's not Diego Luna. Fuck, I just fucked that up.
Can't believe you've done this.
I fuck shit up. Gael Garcia Bernal. It's his Y Tu Mama Tambien co-star. I get those two confused more than I should.
You love that guy though.
I do. I love both of them. They're so good. Y Tu Mama Tambien's such a fucking great movie.
And that gal from Jojo Rabbit and Last Night in Soho is in it too.
Yeah.
I like her a lot. So like if she's in that movie, I'm pretty down. I guess.
It's got the kid from the kid from Hereditary is in there too.
Hereditary.
Oh,
yeah.
Word? The gal what gets her head whipped off?
No. Her brother.
Oh. All right, that's cool. I liked him though. He was good.
You got Ken Lung. Ken Lung's in there too. Like it's got a good cast, man. It's
surprising amount of body horror in that movie.
Yeah, weird. It's pretty wild. It's good. Old is good.
Honestly, that's kind of what I expected from it.
It's not good.
Think the poster
The Happening.
No, dude. Nobody likes The Happening. Not even Mark Wahlberg
sucks.
likes The Happening.
What if Wind was scary?
It's not. See, they made that movie and it was called Twister, and it fucking ripped. In fourth place, down from number 2 the week before, another Adam Sandler movie I actually quite enjoy. You Don't Mess with the Zohan.
I didn't see that one.
I did not expect. I didn't see it for the longest time because I didn't think I would like it. I watched it recently, like a few years ago. It's actually really good. It's really fun.
It was an Adam Sandler's like, I'm gonna make a problematic movie, but then spin it at the end to be something wholesome. Like,
yeah,
like remember, I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry.
Yeah.
To where they're yeah, no, they built the framework to where they're like, oh, but like, we're on team gay, and like this is actually really progressive, and it's like, no, you just needed like free license to like crack homophobic jokes the entire movie, and like
right. But You Don't Mess with the Zohan, I think, does a much better job of.
I agree.
Of threading that needle. So
that's a recommendation from all three of you. I'm the only one who hasn't seen this film. Should I watch it?
The Zohan?
The Zohan?
Yeah, dude.
You're probably gonna hate it,
but watch it anyway.
I want to have an opinion. You guys, you're three of like my 8 friends.
Nice. Made it to the top 8.
By default, I respect your opinion.
So like if there's 3, that's a lot of people that I trust recommending it to me. So even if you think I wouldn't like it, I feel like I gotta check it out.
It's somewhat topical. It's somewhat topical given what is happening in Israel / Gaza
I don't
now.
think about that at all, actually.
But if I can have a spicy take, it's a pretty centrist, hands-off, hey, everybody play nice sort of take.
It is.
Instead
is it going to make me think about that, though? Because I don't want to think about all that stuff.
It's just kind of like it's just
if
somebody
you want to.
It's a very contrarian politically, to where it tries to please everybody while also missing the point. And like, of course, like it's an Adam Sandler's movie.
I was going to say it's an Adam Sandler movie, so you really shouldn't expect.
You're not going to get a
like,
history
the subtext
lesson
to land, right?
Exact. Yeah, you're not going to get an entire like 30-minute like rundown of the history of Israel and Palestine and all that. But like, I mean, it's a fun artifact from that time as well as like what dude was doing and trying to figure out what the hell do I do with my career at this point. And
right. Yeah.
One thing we know that you don't do is you don't mess with the
Let me just another hot take real quick before we move on. Please. I just want to say it publicly finally, and that Adam Sandler, if you're listening, I really need you to do a Bob Dylan biopic, and like Adam Sandler playing Bob Dylan in his like middle age. Like we could have had it 20, 30 years ago and it would have been even better, but I
I'd
still
watch
want to
it.
see Adam Sandler play Bob Dylan.
I'd watch it.
I think it would be fantastic.
I'm still
Now-
pissed you didn't take the role of the Bear Jew in Inglourious Bastards, quite frankly.
Right. I think he was too old.
No,
You think so?
he just because Tarantino offered it to him, like he wrote it for him.
Oh, is that for real? Oh
Yeah.
shit. Okay.
And Sandler was like, "Nah," and I think he was like committed to something else. I couldn't make
It's
it
like,
work.
I gotta
but
do Big Daddy.
It was
Yeah,
it wasn't Big
seriously.
Daddy, but it was something like that, and he
Hey,
wasn't
God,
able
what
to
was
make
that?
it work. So they cast Eli Roth, who I don't, which leads me to think there was a fundamental misunderstanding of what bear means, but whatever.
He's kind of jacked in that. As jacked as Eli Roth could probably possibly get.
That's it.
I
But
think
like
he pulls
compared
it
to
you
off.
could
Sandler,
see like 3 muscles.
kind of popping off the top.
You
of
saw
his
like
head.
a chest and like maybe a bit of a bicep. Yeah.
Right.
Thanks to
He
the
was
wonder
wearing
of
just an
AI,
undershirt. Yeah.
you could have Adam Sandler as the Bear Jew thanks to the wonders of AI.
Right now, de-aging, and we could buff him up.
God,
Yep.
what a horrifying
Just put his head on
dystopian
Macho
society we
Man's
live in.
body.
Finalizing the top 5, we have the sequel. Very few people were actually asking for at this point: Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which in 4 weeks has earned over $276 million.
Way to go, dude.
Also, rounding out the top 10, you've got Sex and the City in 6th place, Iron Man in 7th. Remember Iron Man?
Do you remember in Ed Wood when
The good
the
old
review
days.
in the paper and Sarah Jessica Parker reads it out loud? She says, "Do I really have a face like a horse?" And I just love that moment of that film because that's unfortunately that's something that people say about her.
I don't get
That
it.
she does have sort of a horseish face, which I don't have an opinion either way. She's a lady and she's fine, like whatever. But I don't know why I thought of that. Well, Sex and the City is why I thought of that. But last time I watched Ed Wood, that really stood out to me, and I was like, wow, we just so ahead of our time here, insane. I'm sorry, Steven, continue. Pardon my tangent. Sarah Jessica Parker, you're a lovely lady. I'm not trying to say anything bad about you.
What choice do I have
podcast.
other than to pardon your tangents, really? Because they're going to happen whether I pardon
What are you
them or
gonna
not,
do?
so I might
Like,
as well.
If somebody's gonna edit them out, it's gonna be me, and you know I ain't gonna do that shit. So
I know.
might as well
I
just let
know.
me ramble.
Might
as well.
I always do. In 8th place, we have The Strangers, horror film The Strangers. In 9th place, The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian. And in 10th place, What Happens in Vegas? ...
I don't even know what the fuck that is.
That is
Wait, is that
the
one of those
Ashton
old people
Kutcher,
movies?
Brittany
Oh.
Murphy rom-com.
Ugh.
I thought it was one of those movies where you got like Morgan Freeman and Michael Caine together
Sorry.
and like had them do something wacky because they're old, you know.
Not Brittany
Jack
not a
Lemmon's
Murphy,
in there.
Cameron Diaz. Ashton Kutcher and Cameron Diaz. Also, that movie features playing a character called Dave the Bear, a little actor called Zach Galifianakis.
You guys, that's the guy from the movie that we
That's
Come
watched.
full circle.
We just talked about.
That's the guy from the
I
movie.
know
You said
him.
he was going to be
I
the
know
bear
him.
Jew? Is that what you said? In Inglourious Bastards?
No. Now we're just conflating shit. Now we're just
Oh.
being willfully obtuse.
I think I'm
No.
confused.
You know.
I think Tucker's been
There
disassociated
you-
for the past half hour.
Well, it didn't involve him, so of course.
Entire life.
Right. That's true.
Anyway, the tomatometer score on Visioneers is a 67%. No real critics consensus to speak of on this one. Also, no Metascore to speak of on this one. Metacritic can't find Visioneers when I type it in. However, it does have a 3.0 on Letterboxd. Evan, as our guest, out of 5 stars, how are you rating 2008's Visioneers?
You know, guys, I'd give it a solid 3.7.
Okay.
That's allowed.
Right on. Brett, what
I
about
guess on a
yourself?
letter scale, it would be a B-.
B minus?
Interesting perspective.
Indeed. Brett, yourself?
I bumped it up a whole star to 3.5.
All right,
Hey,
3.5.
Yes.
Tucker, what about you?
Excuse me. Gotta edit that out. Shit. Your boy's gonna go also with a 3.5. My initial was a 3.25, and our conversation today has brought it up a whole 0.25 of a star.
And for me, it's going to be a 3. So
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm going with the letterboxed average, but that does give us a podcast average of 3.425. So we'll round that up to a 3.5. But
repeating, of course,
and that's
every
fair
group
as
needs their
hell.
bad cop.
Yeah, dude.
But there you go.
Bad cop.
That is our episode on 2008's Visioneers. Mr. Evan Tuohy, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Thank you for suggesting this movie. You've given us a lot to think and talk about. Where can the people that are listening to this episode right now, where can they find you and your music should they be so inclined to do so?
If you like my wiggly vibes, you can find me on the internet. I make music. Yeah, the internet. I make music under the moniker Grand Voodoo Band. I also work with Tucker in a band called the Dismantelopes, which will be resurrected very soon. Grand Voodoo Band is currently in the process of making a new album, and there is no end date on that, so take that as you will. But hopefully soon.
I think it's going to be a summer record. It feels like a summer record.
It really does, though. It really does. Tucker's like my idea guy to bounce off stuff too. So
he's good at that.
He honestly has the closest picture to anybody besides myself about how this album's turning out. So I value him. I value his work with this podcast. I value you two for giving this crazy kook of a human being finally a constructive outlet to rant about film to people who actually want to hear it and can put up with that over extremely long periods of time, because I lived with this man.
If you're not into it.
It is not easy. It's not easy.
I don't know how
living
constructive
with a man
the
that's
outlet
cheesy.
is, but
I think it's more constructive than having him rant about it to me on a 7-hour phone call, which has definitely happened. But
I mean, look, Evan, that's the whole reason I got into podcasting, is because my ex-wife got tired of me talking about movies. So I had to start a
ex-wife,
podcast.
am I right, guys? Am I right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Hey.
Got about 5 of those.
Yeah, dude. Between us, yeah.
But anyway, yeah, check out Grand Voodoo Band on whatever your listening platform is. Where I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, etc., MySpace, LinkedIn. So
Threads, Blue Sky.
Oh yeah, all of them.
If you need a Blue Sky invite code, I have several. So just let me know.
Yeah, dude, he's got them. Holler at you.
I, as a musician, love text-based social media platforms.
They're the best,
and they're the best, especially when there's 500 of them, all different but all the same.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Silicon Valley overlords, for putting on this podcast.
Amen.
And it's been an absolute chaotic episode, it feels like, but it was a pleasure, and are fine.
An organized chaos, but yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
A fine group of tunts right here.
Well, hey,
that's the best compliment one could receive.
And I will just a little spoiler. Next week, listeners, when you tune into this podcast, you will get to hear some of Mr. Evan Tuohy's music. We'll be playing one of those songs on next week's episode. I will give you no more context.
Episode, silly. It's at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
The one we're recording right now.
Next week's episode.
What's next week's episode?
The one you teased on the "What Are We Watching" episode that we recorded before this one.
Oh no, fuck. I thought of the wrong thing. I'm sorry. I'm the
So he
worst
was
person ever.
teasing the theme song, I believe. This is getting edited, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, because before Jimmy's like, "Oh, Tucker's the best, and we all love him," and I'm like, "Let me stick my foot in my mouth." So yeah, this will get edited out. Sorry, please continue.
If you want, I can just I can just briefly talk about the track if you want.
Yeah.
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 Go ahead.
Anyway,
yeah.
I got you. So the track that I'm putting out through you guys, which is really fun to be able to debut some new music finally. It's called Citrus Nights. It is the title track to the album that is upcoming. And it was actually a tune that was going to get thrown away. And I ended up coming back to it and taking a risk on it. And it kind of paid off when I added some synthesizers and a tight drum beat. So it's unmastered. It's a demo. There's more. There's a couple more pieces to it that I still need to throw down, I believe. But that's what demos are for. So I'm just excited to let some people hear it.
This is a sneak peek. Like, this isn't out any. This is the only place that you'll hear this until the record drops, and we don't even know when that's going to be. So this is literally
it'll actually be a B-side.
Exclusive.
It's the title track, but it's going to be a B-side on a single that is TBA on its release date. But
the song will be on the record, though, right?
But this is the only place where you're going to be able to hear it until it is released as a single, which is pretty exciting.
There you go.
You're welcome, America and the rest of the world.
You heard it here first.
Thank you.
So there you go. And look, our patrons already get to hear Mr. Tuohy's phenomenal music every week because he also composed the theme to our Patreon exclusive weekly show, What Are We Watching?, which he guested on today. So that episode will be dropping on Sunday into the Patreon feed.
It might be our longest episode of What Are We Watching?
I think that's
and
safe
check
to
it
say.
out. It's phenomenal.
If you are not a member of our Patreon, head on over to patreon.com/disenfranchpod, where for just $5 a month, you get access to literal hours and hours and hours of...
Don't front, Steven. Days of content.
Podcasts
don't lie to these people.
Galore. Brett and I both have our own individual niche podcast where we talk about the things that interest us. We've got backlogs of film commentaries and Disin 5 Chais where we count down our top 5 favorite things in a given category. We've got Unenfranchised where we talk about movies that killed off your favorite long-running franchise, kind of the opposite of what this podcast is. We've got so much for you to listen to back there for just $5 over at patreon.com/disenfranchpod. Head on over there. While you're on the internet, head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a nice, juicy 5-star rating and review. And just, again, doesn't have to be anything deep. Just, write a little something about what you like about the podcast. That goes a long way to helping other people find us as well. You can also shoot us an email, disenfranchpod@gmail.com. Let us know how we're doing. Suggest a upcoming episode. We actually had a suggestion come in from a listener just within the last couple of weeks. So that is something that I will be working on getting into the schedule as soon as possible.
I want to know what it is. Tell me what it is sometime when we're not recording a podcast.
Absolutely. I will do that at some point. You can also visit us on the social medias. We are on Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook, Letterboxd @disenfranchpod. I, your host, Stephen Foxworthy. Hey, that's me. I'm on Blue Sky, Letterboxd, and Instagram @ChewyWalrus. Brett, where can we find you on the socials these days?
That's me. I am on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Bluesky at sus_warlock, except for Blue Sky where it doesn't have the underscore because it wouldn't let me.
Right.
So it's just all one word then on Bluesky.
All one word. Yep.
Fascinating.
All one word on the Bluesky.
Fascinating.
Yeah. There it is. Yeah. And Tucker, where can we find you on the socials, bud?
Well, as always, you can find me on the YouTubes. I'm going to mention this now so that I have some accountability and maybe it'll give me some motivation to do it. But what I'd really like to do in the next month and a half is I'd like to realize something that I've called Christmas spaghetti. And Christmas spaghetti is a song that I've written
have it.
about eating spaghetti on, get this, you heard about this? You seen this? On spaghetti on Christmas.
No.
Spaghetti on Christmas.
You're a madman.
No kidding.
I know. And it's a whole song. 3 verses, the chorus, it can be sung around.
Is that how songs go these days? Man, they're doing some weird stuff with songs these days.
Sometimes. I haven't written the bridge yet, but I feel like there's going to be one. But I feel like I really need to go all out with it. Like, I need the shaky bells, and I need a bing, boom, bing, bing. I need kind of variations on every Christmas song trope. I don't know. It just seems like it's going to be a big undertaking. Just know that me announcing it now means that I might not get it done, but I'll probably start on it.
Okay. Well, hey, as long as we can help keep you accountable, then hey, that's.
And look,
that's all
I'd like to get it done this year before Christmas, but look at it like this. Sometimes when you start something and then you walk away from it for, let's say, 8 to 10 months, and then you come back to it fresh, and you turn it into something that you never thought it could be.
Right on.
Because I'm not going to work on a Christmas song outside of Christmas. There'll be no inspiration, no motivation. You can't. What am I supposed to do, a Christmas song in January?
Yes.
You could, yeah.
And then you sit on it for 10 months. And
No,
then
the only thing
November.
stopping you is you there, man. But
No,
okay.
dude. Look, I will acknowledge that I'm not a fan of arbitrary rules that people set for themselves. But this
except for the arbitrary rules you set for yourself.
The fact that I'm the exception to the rule.
This is the arbitrary hill that I am willing to die on. You can't do Christmas stuff outside of Christmas. You want to. Like, I don't get Christmas in July like I want to, because I want to feel Christmas, but I just don't feel it unless it's November or December. Like, once Christmas is over, you got a little bit of afterglow until New Year's, but then, it's just fucking January after that.
Your summer Christmas spirit, or lack thereof, is showing.
No, dude, I have no summer Christmas spirit.
What about all those images of Santa playing golf in shorts? Are you going to deny that?
I am.
You're going to sit there and lie to me and deny that?
I suppose so.
The man exists outside of your winter wonderland delusion.
No, I agree, but he's not come. Why would he come in the summer, man? It's not Christmas. It doesn't matter. I'm on YouTube and I might drop a song at some point, if you motherfuckers are lucky. Also, I'm on Instagram at the same Ice909, ICENINE, the number 0 and the number 9. I also have a sort of a cult page, you could say, something that's garnered quite the niche following, something we like to call Tuck Mugs. Why did I say that like? Anyway, we have Tuck Mugs. That's Tuck_mugs. And look, the restructuring, it's happened. We're all
for the third week in a row now. There's restructuring.
No, the synergy is there. It's taking us so long because we're working on making it the best it can possibly be. And you know what they say is that Rome wasn't built in a day.
Do they?
And I heard you ran out of cups.
I can't. I still have my tulip print. I still have my Tweeds double R cup. Spoilers. I still have my Lake Tahoe cups, the one that feels like I'm drinking out of a toilet because it's porcelain. That cup. I've got some in my back pocket. Like, I've saved some up. Plus, I've been buying more mugs.
Tuck muggin'.
Yeah, dude. So it's coming together. It's just we're really trying to dedicate ourselves to the quality, and sometimes that takes time. And gosh, wouldn't it be cool if somebody, be a guest mug, so that we can kind of pad out this time while we're letting our creative juices flow and mix together and make a jambalaya, if you will, of mug-based Instagram content. So if you want to be a guest mug on Tuck Mugs, you can shoot us a message on Tuck Mugs on Instagram at Tuck_mugs, or you can email us at disenfranchpod friendsgiving@gmail.com. Just send us a photograph of your mug. Let us know where you got the mug, the origin story of the mug and what it means to you, and what's inside of the mug. That's all you need.
And deep in the annals of Tuck Mug history, there is a guest mug from our guest on this podcast today, Mr. Evan
Each
Tuohy.
one of us, each of you
I'd
has
like to
done
do it
a guest
again.
mug. You should.
I'm gonna
You
do it
should.
again,
Do
whether
it.
you like
Do
it or
it.
not.
Do it right
Okay,
now.
shit.
I'm happy
He's
to do it.
literally
Fine.
begging someone to send him a picture of a mug.
Please.
So we
Really
can put it
quick,
up
really
there.
quick.
Look.
Preview. Does this count?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
we do glasses too. Yeah,
He does glassware, yeah.
I've done.
In my hand
like
is a
pint
beautiful
glasses.
Ham's glass.
Yeah, well,
Mm.
that's second generation BT dubs, you guys, because there was one time I was drinking Hams out of it,
Let them know.
and we lived on the second floor, okay, and we were outside on the balcony, and I was just having a really good time, and I had
He's
dropped that
about
glass.
to. I was gonna say, something stupid's about to happen because
And
he's
look.
talking like this.
And look, I had dropped that glass, and then I had walked down there, and it was in like 7 pieces. And so before I got back up to the apartment, I had already ordered a replacement off eBay. So like, just smoothed that right over. Like, we didn't even talk about it. I was just like, yeah, I ordered you a new one. The night just went on after that. Like, sometimes your boy knows how to like just really smooth that shit over. And boy, was I embarrassed.
Fucked up, didn't I? Yes.
Yeah, I fucked up, and I know the degree to which I fucked up, and I know what I need to do to rectify it. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip the next 5 minutes of discussion.
Now, Jimmy. Now, Jimmy.
It'll be here in 3 days, man. Moving on.
Now, where were we? Yes.
Oh, hey, that's
Now,
a preview because
Jimmy.
that's got to be part of the story now. We should do like a back and forth, like someone's interviewing us, and for the post, like we'll go back and forth about it. It'd be good. I'll get with you later.
Just get it to the intern pool as soon as you can.
Yeah, dude. We'll get it on the internets, live on the internets.
Well, that, my friends, is our episode on 2008's Visioneers. I think this episode is actually longer than the movie.
By like 40
what are we
minutes.
watching?
Yeah, and also longer than
Actually,
what are
about
we
50
watching?
minutes, yeah.
So yeah, longer than the movie itself, but hey, that is a thing that we do. So hey, this has been the Disenfranchised Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Foxworthy, for my co-hosts, Brett Wright, Tucker, and our very special guest, Mr. Evan Tuohy. Until next time, a very Jeffers evening to you all.
Jeffers evening.